Hey everyone, and welcome to today's event, live Facebook event that Urban Hedge is doing in partnership with Little Steps Asia, specifically the Bump Club Hong Kong. Now, I'm really excited, and because this is actually the first planned event that we're doing live over Facebook. If you guys attended our feeding event in June, the one that was organized around the typhoon, you will remember that we couldn't go ahead with the live event at Bump Club, and we then decided in 1 hour to turn it all around and turn it into a live Facebook event. And it actually worked so well. So we have decided to set up Ask the Urban Midwife sessions that we're doing once a month. So that is Urban Hedge in partnership with Bump Club Hong Kong, or the other way around, it doesn't really matter. So now today is all about how to plan and prepare for birth. So we're going to talk about birth plans, and we're going to talk about how to best prepare. And I'm hoping that many of you are going to ask questions. If you're unsure about something specifically related to where you're living or your situation, just pop them into the comment box. And what I will do is I will just regularly peek over and see what's there. Now, before I start, I just want to do a little shout out to the Bump Club Little Steps team. So I think we've got Natalie, who just jumped online. Hi, Nat. We have Shay as well. Who else is joining? I think Irina might be joining. So yeah, hoping for lots more people. Now, let's get started. Now, just a little bit about myself. So my name is Sofie, for those of you who don't know me. And I am a midwife. I became a midwife about 20 years ago, and I recently set up a company called Urban Hedge. And Urban Hedge essentially is designed to provide guidance throughout pregnancy, birth, and the first 12 months with baby. And I'm very excited to announce as well that very soon, actually in November this year, I'm going to be launching online courses. Now, Bump Club Hong Kong has been around for a little while. They're a little bit older, I think, than Urban Hedge, but we're both, I would say, seedlings that are hoping to grow much bigger. So, guys, if you're on the Bump Club Hong Kong page, but you're not on Urban Hedge yet, then later on after the event, like the Urban Hedge page as well. And if you're watching this through my Urban Hedge feed and you're not on Bump Club Hong Kong yet, then do the same thing. Pop onto Bump Club Hong Kong Facebook page and like them as well. So yes, I have two feeds going on. So if you see my eyes going a little bit up and down, it means that I'm checking in with any questions that may be around. I don't need to do housekeeping rules because it's literally just me and I know the rules of my flat. So obviously you can see me, I can see you, but if you have any questions, again, just repeating myself, pop your question into the comments box and I will regularly peek over to see, oh, hi Rita, to see who is there and to see whether we have any questions. Okay, now I think you guys are ready to get started, and so am I, so we'll just get bang straight into it. Now, we're gonna talk about birth plans and preparing for birth, and I'm going to split up this session into 4 little subtopics. So I'm gonna start by explaining the big difference between having a birth plan and actually preparing for birth. Then we're going to move on to how to actually realistically write a birth plan in realistic terms. Then we'll talk about choosing labor support. And then we'll finish off with what you can do to prepare yourself both mentally and physically, because mind and body are both really important when it comes to labor and birth. So back to the first point, the difference between a birth plan and preparing for birth. Now, in my practice, birth plans come actually under the preparation umbrella. And I'm just going to extract the birth plans out of that first. Now, with birth plans over the last 20 years of being a midwife, I have come slightly full circle. And I'll just explain you why. Now, when I first started my training in Belgium, my medical training, my medical midwifery training, we had no birth plans at all. Women literally all gave birth in the lithotomy position, which means with their knees up. And everyone had routinely an episiotomy. There wasn't really that much breastfeeding going on. So very, very interesting. Then I moved to the UK to gain experience, and I'm so glad I did, because suddenly I got thrown into this labor ward, and women were coming to me with a A4 document, printed out, bullet points. I would like this, and I don't want that, and that. And I thought, wow, this is fantastic. We're giving women choices. We are giving women choices. This is empowering. We're making them be in charge of their own labor and birth. A number of years now in total, 18 years on from that, I have actually gone from being a complete 100% supporter of birth plans into now feeling that we definitely need to put some things on paper, but we need to do it in a realistic way. Because birth plans, if they are written too rigidly, and if they are taken too rigidly by the person or the people who have written the birth plan, it's going to set you up for huge amounts of feelings of failure if your birthing experience doesn't turn out the way you had in mind. So that is the birth plan. Yeah, a birth plan in my mind should be a document that you use to communicate your wishes to the medical team, whether you're working with a private hospital or a public hospital. If you're watching this from the UK and you're in a birthing center, it's just a document that you use to communicate your wishes. And when I go to the second point in this talk, I'm going to give you a detailed explanation of what would be good to write in your birth plan. Now, what's the difference between a birth plan and actually preparing for birth? So as I said, in my practice, I definitely see the birth plan as part of the birth preparation, but it's a small segment of it. Because, you cannot expect your birth plan to turn your birthing experience into a good one if you're not mentally and physically prepared. So that is the difference. So I prefer to use in my practice a birth strategy that includes a birth plan, but it also includes good, solid preparation, both on a mental level and on a physical level. So, and then everything comes together, and it just sets people up for more realistic expectations, and therefore less chance post-birth to feel disappointed and to feel as if they have failed. Now, if that makes sense, just give me a quick like or a heart. That would be useful, because again, it is an event online, but I do want this to be as interactive as possible. So if that resonates with you, just give me a quick like. Who else is here? Oh, hi Katie, welcome. Now, moving on to how to actually write a birth plan. So if you haven't written yours and you are due in a few months, this will be good for you to keep in mind. You start writing your birth plan by putting at the bottom, giving birth. Yeah, that is your goal. And it's the only guarantee that you will get from your birth plan. The only guarantee that you get from a birth plan is giving birth. How you get there is not something that you can always predict, because it's a journey, and it's a little bit like going on a trip to a place you've never ever been before, and you don't know whether there is public transport available or whether you're going to have to walk. You don't know whether you're going to have to go over hills or through water. So you need to keep an open mind. And it's definitely possible to write a birth plan whilst keeping an open mind. So at the bottom, what goes down is, I am planning on giving birth. That is the guarantee that you will get. You're going to give birth. Now, one of the things that I would then really seriously think about is, and including in your birth plan, is choosing your labor support. And in the third part of this talk, I'm actually going to go into quite a bit of detail on how to choose the best support. So you start by saying, okay, I would like this and this person, or this and this person, or this and this and this person to be with me during labor and birth. Then the second thing that you might want to make clear, sorry, my top keeps on popping down. That is the kind of downside of seeing yourself in these talks. So at least I'll be able to see if I have spinach between my teeth and I can sort it out, because there's nothing more annoying than doing a talk whilst having spinach in your teeth. So back to the birth plan. So we've got labor support partner. Then the second thing is, you also want to communicate, whether you guys are watching this from Hong Kong or from the UK or from Singapore, you want to make clear that you want to try to use your body's lead and follow your body's lead. By that I mean is that you want to try to move around as much as possible during labor. And that is simply because of laws of gravity. The more vertical you are, or the more forward tilted you are during your labor, the easier it is for your baby to move down. And when you're in labor, you're working hard, your body is working hard, but your baby is working hard to go down as well. And I'm based in Hong Kong. So in Hong Kong, most hospitals have now got onto the fact that gravity can actually be a huge help. There are still some hospitals that need a little bit of a nudge. So in your birth plan, definitely worth saying, I would like to try to move around as much as possible, whenever my body tells me that it's time to change position. And if your labor is progressing in a straightforward way, there is no issue for you to do that, okay? Then closely tied into that is the point about continuous monitoring of the baby's heart rate and the contractions. And that is what we call CTG monitoring. And CTG monitoring is something that is going to have to be done at some point during labor, but it doesn't have to be continuously done unless there is a medical indication for it. And why? Because the CTG monitor is a fairly big and bulky machine. It's got leads, it's got two big buttons. One you have to pop onto the top of your belly, the other one goes on to the side where the baby's back is lying. And it just makes moving around that little bit more fiddly. In some hospitals now, mostly the private hospitals, there are wireless CTG monitors available, which makes life a little bit easier. But the bottom line is that in your birth plan, you can write, and it is a realistic and very fair request, that you do not want continuous monitoring unless there is a medical indication for it. And an example of a medical indication to have continuous CTG monitoring, for example, would be epidural analgesia. So if you're not feeling your contractions that much, we need to make sure that we see them on our graph and we can monitor the baby's heart rate against it. If you're being induced with the use of syntocinon via a drip, that would be another medical indication for you to be monitored on the CTG monitor continuous. Okay, so that's just to give you a couple of examples. So far we have support, then we have moving around, we have CTG monitoring, you can think a little bit about that. Then another really important point is that you want to include in your birth plan the fact that you'd like to keep your energy up by eating and drinking as and when you like. Again, as long as there are no medical contraindications. And the reason why I'm pretty big on eating and drinking during labor is that it's proven, and I know this from experience, that a body that's fueled with energy, whether that's water, sports drinks, coconut water, little bites of energy bars, a handful of nuts, but a fueled body will labor easier and better than a body that's running on empty. So if your labor is progressing normally and there are no complications, there is no reason why you shouldn't be allowed to eat and drink, okay? And this is a really important point to include in your birth plan. Any questions so far? Now, to read the questions, I need to move into my screen. Okay, no questions so far. So we're going to move into my next point, which is pain relief options. Now, in the next few months, we are actually going to do a live event on pain relief options. So I'm not going to give away too much on that in detail. However, what I will say is that it's important for you to think about various pain relief options before you go into labor. And again, you know, when it comes to birth plans, I remember seeing many birth plans on labor ward from women who had practically copied and pasted the birth plan of their friends and said, I do not want an epidural, I do not want pethidine, I do not want Gessner, I basically don't want any pain relief whatsoever. And that is all fine. I mean, it is for many women possible to give birth without any pain relief. But until you are going through the process, you won't know that, okay? So you can do lots and lots of mental and physical preparation, but when it comes to pain relief, I would say, you know, inform yourself about the available options. Go on to a good quality antenatal class that delivers its information in a very unbiased and non-judgmental, factual way. You learn about what's out there, you think a little bit about it, and you keep an open mind. And then what you could do is write in your birth plan, you know, I like the idea of having Gessner. I don't like so much the idea of having pethidine because there is an injection involved, but I wouldn't mind trying some Panadol and I wouldn't mind having the epidural. Or in your birth plan, you might say, I would like to try to avoid all forms of medical pain relief, and I would like to use my massive toolbox of natural coping strategies and see if I get on that way. And that would be, in my experience, the best way to think about pain relief options in relation to the birth plan. So you wanna go into it with an open mind. You know, your mind and body is gonna take you to a place you've never seen before. And it's a good place, and women are meant to labor and give birth. But at this stage, you know, you don't know how you're going to feel on the day. So let's just not be too rigid about deciding on pain relief options beforehand. Does that all make sense? I usually get a fair amount of questions when I talk about this part. So I'm just going to peek over again. No questions yet, I don't think. No. Hi, Eugene. We have a man in the hood, which is awesome. Then I'm going to move on to, there is no questions, onto the parts that very often are mentioned in, oh, there is a question actually. Hi, Sulan, welcome. Okay, so I'm going to read the question out loud. So if we do not give any specific instructions, what would the hospital do as standards during labor and after delivery? I see, for example, some birth plan templates say, I would like to delay newborn procedures such as bathing and measuring for the first hour to give me a chance to feed and bond with my baby. Silan, that is a very, very awesome question, and I was just going on to that. When it comes to birth plans, you know, again, you know, your baby is going to come out. You are going to give birth. So the birth plan actually becomes more important when it comes to things such as bathing and measuring. And I don't know where you got that template from, Sulan, but it sounds totally like an Urban Hedge template of a birth plan. I actually don't work with templates, but it's definitely something I talk about all my clients. Now, so bathing, every hospital has got its own policy, okay? So I'm just going to start by tracing back a little bit to the moment when you've given birth. You've given birth, and then, you know, what I would suggest that you do is you try to get some skin-to-skin contact with your baby. Either you as a mum or either you as a dad, if there is any dads watching. It is quite important that if we have a freshly newborn baby who is breathing okay, and he or she is healthy and moving around, not moving around as in crawling, because that would be way too early, but, you know, good muscle tone, etc., etc., that baby could easily spend some time on its mother or its father's chest. And skin to skin is awesome because it does two things. It keeps babies from getting cold, yeah, because babies, when they're inside, are in this amazing, beautiful, warm bath at an almost perfectly constant temperature. And then as they come out, they get thrown into the big wide world and it's cold. So instead of wrapping them in blankets, why not use our own bodies and we pop the baby onto our chest, skin to skin? So yes, baby can wear a nappy, that's no problem. You can put a blanket on top, but you do want those two layers of skin meeting each other. The second benefit is that babies find that very soothing, okay? Especially if you pop your baby onto the side of where your heart is. So that is obviously your left side. It looks like I'm pointing to the right, but it's because of the camera. So baby goes onto the chest, whether it's mom's chest or dad's chest, and just hangs out there. Could be an hour, could be an hour and a half. You know, maybe you then, if you want to try to breastfeed, you want to try to breastfeed with some help. But definitely an important point to put in your birth plan. And you write it in a way that is not too bossy, but very clear. You know, you just say, look, skin to skin contact with my baby is very important. And then you have a communication, you have a discussion with it when you get to the hospital with your midwife. And I find, again, you know, I'm in Hong Kong, so I'm going to talk about Hong Kong first. I find that in Hong Kong, most hospitals now understand the concept of skin to skin contact. But in most hospitals, you have to suggest it. You know, they may not suggest it themselves. So definitely an important one. Now, what happens if skin-to-skin contact isn't possible? You know, if your baby isn't breathing so well on his own and he needs a little bit of extra oxygen, then you're not going to be able to do skin-to-skin contact. And then it's not something that you want to fight. So again, skin-to-skin is perfectly possible if there is no medical contraindications for it. So nappy goes on, and then you simply pop the baby into your shirt, t-shirt that you're wearing for giving birth. If you don't feel like doing it, then, you know, maybe your partner can do it, but skin to skin is important. Then the second thing, Sulan, that you mentioned is, so baby center. The second thing you mentioned is bathing and measuring. So I'm always going on about that with clients, and it's definitely an important point that you can include in your birth plan. Please, 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 can you wait for an hour or an hour and a half before you measure and weigh the baby? You know, babies don't put on weight within an hour, and that hour will go super, super fast. Once that hour is over, or that hour and a half is over, then all those little things can be done. One of the reasons why I don't like to bathe babies immediately after birth, and that's something else that you can put in your birth plan. Babies don't need a bath. Katie, I'm just going to get back to your question in a moment. Babies don't need a bath. Yes, you know, they come out, and if they come out through the vagina, there's going to be, or if it's a cesarean section even, there's going to be some amniotic fluid covering the baby, there's going to be some blood. If the baby does a poo whilst he's being born, there might be a little bit of baby poo involved in that, but that gets all wiped off. You know, a baby comes out and we wipe the baby down, otherwise baby gets cold. So once all of that fluidy stuff is gone, pop the baby onto your skin, and then, you know, the baby doesn't need a bath until ideally the umbilical cord falls off, because an umbilical cord stump heals so much better when it's nice and dry. But I do understand that most parents like to have a demonstration bath done whilst they're in the hospital. So realistically, most babies will end up having a bath on day 2 or 3 before going home, and that is absolutely fine. Bathing is not necessary immediately after birth because babies get cold easily, and babies are born with this awesome unique thing. Babies have got a layer. For some babies it's going to be very thin, and for other babies it's going to be very thick. It's a layer of vernix, and vernix is a white substance, like a very rich moisturizing cream that covers the baby's body, and it acts as a barrier. It also acts as a moisturizer, and it also helps to build your baby's immune system. Because obviously, vaginal birth especially, baby comes out, picks up some normal, healthy bacteria, and the baby's body will absorb those through the vernix. I hope that all makes sense. So definitely you can request no bathing immediately after birth, and nowadays most hospitals are going to be okay with that. Okay, Katie, I'm just going to read out your question. So this is a public hospital question. If your initial pain relief plan doesn't work out, e.g. epidural, how late in the labor can you use pethidine, and can you request a small amount, half the dose, if the pain is too much to cope with? Okay, so now if you, first part of your question, so about the initial pain relief plan, as I said a little bit earlier on, it's impossible to plan exactly what kind of pain relief you're going to want to use, you're going to need to use, or you're not going to use during labor. So you'll need to keep an open mind. So just inform yourself about the different options available and then see how you go on the day. Now, if you cannot have an epidural, so if you're in a public hospital, reasons why epidurals may not be available is, you know, it might be too early on in the labor. So let's say if you're in labor and you're in the very early stage of the labor where the cervix may be 2 to 3 centimeters dilated, in most public hospitals it's going to be too early for you to have an epidural. Then pethidine indeed could be a good option, especially if you're feeling tense and you just feel that you want to take the edge off a little bit. Pethidine is not something I recommend for everybody and for every scenario, so we always need to look at the individual person we have in front of us. But if it's a matter of being very early on in the labor and public hospital says, no, it's too early to have an epidural, then you definitely can ask for pethidine. Pethidine is a very effective form of pain relief. It is derived from the opium plant, so it's similar to morphine but not quite as full on. It is given by injection. The effect lasts for about 45 minutes to an hour, and what it does is it actually makes you feel, it just makes you feel heavy and relaxed. The downside of it is that it can actually give you a little bit of nausea, but we nowadays give anti-nausea medicine together with the pethidine when we do that. So pethidine, yes. Now, can you request half a dose of pethidine? If you're early on in the labor, you want to go for the full dose that the hospital prescribes. If on the flip side, Katie, let's imagine that you're in labor and you're 8 centimeters dilated, and the public hospital turns around and says, well, now it really is too late for the epidural. Then it would be too late for pethidine as well, okay? I am only happy to give pethidine when it's early on in the labor. Why? Because it does cross the placenta, And it makes mamas relaxed, but it also makes babies relaxed. And we cannot have relaxed babies at the end of the labor, you know, because we need them to come out. We need them to move down. So that is why. But you know, you still can have questionnaire then. Katie, just give me a little like or heart or yes or no if whether that answer made sense and whether I've covered everything. Okay, Natalie, yes, next question. I just wanted my husband to cut the cord and be the one to tell me the sex of the baby. We put that onto the birth plan to let the midwives know, which they followed. Good to share, definitely good to share. You know, cutting the umbilical cord is something that I always discuss with my clients as well. And again, it's something that you can write in the birth plan if your partner is up for doing that. I find in reality, again, you know, unless your partner has already gone through that process, you don't know how he's gonna feel in the moment. So you can put it in your birth plan, but leave it open to change. Discovering the sex of your baby, if that is something that you want to do yourself, you definitely need to put that in your birth plan and let the midwives know, because a lot of midwives, including myself, we just get so excited when we don't know the sex of the baby that we're delivering yet, that, you know, if we haven't been reminded that our clients don't want to hear the sex from us, it can just kind of blurt out. But so definitely a good reminder, Natalie. Thank you for that. Okay, Amber, welcome to this talk. I've been reading about delayed cord clamping, but I've read anywhere from 1 minute to when the blood stops pulsing. What do you typically recommend? Thanks. Now, thanks, Amber, for that question. A very good question. Delayed cord clamping is something that has gotten a lot of media, and with a lot of media comes a lot of noise. A lot of good noise and a lot of not so good noise. Now, delayed cord clamping, I find the term itself a little bit funny because, I mean, we shouldn't really cut the umbilical cord within the first 15 seconds after birth, and it's something that we only do if there's a medical indication for, i.e. if the cord is around the neck, you know, then we obviously need to cut it immediately. But in all other scenarios, and in most hospitals now, we actually wait about 30 seconds to a minute before we cut the umbilical cord. And Amber, I completely agree with you. There's a lot of articles out there that recommend delaying the cord clamping, cord cutting. It's actually clamping cutting until the cord stops pulsating. And an umbilical cord pulsates, right? Even when the baby is out, but is still attached. And it's super cool because it means that there is still, you know, nutrients and blood flow going from the placenta to the baby. Now, from a medical perspective, there is no benefits whatsoever by delaying cutting and clamping and cutting the cord, you know, until it stops pulsating. Yes, we want to wait for about 30 seconds to a minute because then we ensure that that the baby still gets nutrients and iron from the placenta, and that the baby gets a little bit of time to switch over to his circulation. Again, unless there's medical contraindications and we need to move fast. But there's no benefit whatsoever in delaying the clamping and cutting to the point of, you know, when the cord stops pulsating. Having said that, if that is something that you want to do, you know, having the cord and the placenta attached until the cord stops pulsating, you know, most hospitals are not going to stop you, but from a medical point of view, there is absolutely no need. So work towards 30 seconds / a minute, and that will be perfect. Amber, does that make sense? Just let me know. Okay, now next question. Lau, welcome to this talk. Is it common that I will feel so numb after taking an epidural that I will not be able to push? That is, again, it's a very, very good question. And so when it comes to the birth plan in relation to epidurals, what you could think about mentioning is that if you do need, or if you do want to have an epidural, request an epidural, what we call mobile epidurals. A mobile epidural is the same thing as a normal full epidural, but we give less dosage of the initial bolus, which means that instead of feeling completely numb from the waist down, you're only going to feel partially numb. Okay, and that I think is quite important. Now, all private hospitals offer mobile epidurals. Some of the public hospitals in Hong Kong are catching on to it as well, but I would still, you can still mention it in your birth plan. Now, if it happens that you end up with a epidural analgesia that is slightly heavier than was intended, then you can simply allow it to slightly wear off in preparation for the pushing phase, okay? So that by the time you get to the pushing phase, you do feel a little bit the direction in which you need to push. When it comes to the pushing phase anyway, one big thing to keep in mind, and this is especially for clients and women who end up with an epidural either because they want one or because they need one, is to remember that you want to push as if you've been massively constipated for over a week and all you want to do is a big massive poo whilst not being embarrassed about it. Okay, because that will help then with the effects of that epidural onto the pushing technique. Lau, I hope that makes sense. Just give me a little comment so I know I can move on to the next question. Alison, welcome, and thank you for that question. What about pethidine being passed to the baby? So pethidine, yes, so pethidine definitely gets passed on to the baby. Pethidine does cross the placenta. So the effects of it on us mamas is that it makes us feel relaxed and super chilled when it's given in the early stages of the labor, and babies are going to go into that dozy, sleepy state as well. Pethidine is a drug of which the effects last for about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour, maximum an hour and a half, and then they go. So if you have pethidine early on in the labor, by the time it comes to giving birth, the pethidine will be out of your system and the baby is going to be as awake as you are, ready to come into the world. So pethidine at the beginning of a labor, in the early stages, when you're between, let's say 2 to 4 centimeters dilated, is not a problem. If it's given late in the labor, very close to giving birth, then babies come out feeling a little bit sleepy. But you know what? Most hospitals now, actually in Hong Kong, no hospitals give pethidine late in the labor anymore. Alison, let me know whether that question got answered sufficiently for you. Jocelyn, hi Jocelyn. Is the Queen Mary a hospital that recognizes and gives walking epidural? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say, Jocelyn, is that I don't like to use the term walking epidural because it's very, very misleading. And I always get a little bit, what's the word? A little bit fidgety about it when midwives and doctors use this term. Because, it makes people think that when they have an epidural, they can actually still have a walkabout. And for the vast majority of people, even with a walking epidural, they're not going to be able to walk anymore because their legs are going to be partially numbed and not strong enough to carry the rest of the body. So I'm going to call it a mobile epidural, and I'm going to answer your question with the mobile epidural. Queen Mary Hospital, there's some anesthetists now that will give mobile epidurals. So if you're giving birth in Queen Mary, it's definitely something that you can mention in your birth plan, that, hey, you know, if I want an epidural, or if I end up with one, can I please have a mobile epidural so I'm not completely numb? Okay, that makes sense? Just write a quick comment if you don't mind, Jocelyn. Now I'm just I'm just glancing up to my feed. Oh, hi, Jasmine. Okay, so now, if there's any more questions on birth plan topics, please keep them coming. In the meantime, I'm going to move on to the rest of the points that I wanted to include in my birth plan bit. Feeding is an important one. So if you want to try to breastfeed your baby, it is definitely important that you write that in your birth plan, and that you also write that you want help for the first few times that you're feeding your baby, okay? Because breastfeeding, yes, breast milk is a very natural form of nutrition for babies, but getting it from the breast into the baby's mouth is actually a skill that needs to be learned. And new skills are always learned better and easier and faster if you've got someone by your side who helps you through it. So in your birth plan, do write, if I want to try to breastfeed, please organize help for the first few times whilst I'm feeding. Remember as well that babies can get very sleepy after coming out of the birth canal, so don't be afraid if your baby is not interested in breastfeeding within the first few hours after birth. Then I would recommend that you try to breastfeed, pop your baby on the breast under supervision of someone who is with you, one of the midwives. And then if your baby isn't interested, simply pop your baby onto your chest, skin to skin, and then try again half an hour or an hour or so later. Another thing in relation to breastfeeding, I would like you to keep in mind and consider to make part of your birth plan. A lot of Hong Kong hospitals now are very keen on getting women to express breast milk before the actual milk has come in. Because, you know, when you're pregnant and when you've just given birth, your breasts produce colostrum. Colostrum is this beautiful substance that contains many, many antibodies and all other sorts of goodies for baby. And then after 3 or 4 days, if you've had a vaginal birth, and 5 to 6 days after cesarean section, that's when your proper breast milk is going to come in, you know, the milk that's going to make your baby put on weight. So breastfeeding, that establishment of the breast milk is a process that is best left alone unless there is a medical indication for you to start pumping, expressing milk before your milk has come in, okay? And why am I banging on a little bit about that? Because I mean, in my practice, I do a lot of home visits after people have given birth, and I've been dealing with a lot of engorged breasts in the last months. And the vast majority of these ladies with engorged breasts that I've seen were all told to express on day 1 or 2 after giving birth. And there's no need for that, okay? So the best thing that you can do to get your milk supply going is by breastfeeding your baby on demand in these early days. Pop your baby onto the breast, every 2 hours if your baby doesn't want to go on the breast automatically, him or herself. And then you can see if your milk supply comes in and it then appears to be a little bit on the low side, then we can always add expressing to enhance that. But, you know, by starting to express very early on in that process, we often create a situation where women end up with way too much milk, which sounds glorious, but honestly, it can be a real pain. So definitely want to consider for your birth plan, you know, no expressing until milk comes in, unless there is a clear medical indication for you to do so, okay? Okay, now thank you, Jocelyn, for that comment. Okay, now moving on to choosing your support for labor. And for those of you who just joined, choosing support is a very important part of preparing for birth, and it's obviously something that you want to put in your birth plan as well. You want to make clear to your medical team who is going to be with you. And I like to look at support during labor in three parts. Yeah, we've got the A team, we've got the B team, and we've got the C team. The A team is going to be you as the laboring woman and your labor partner or labor partners. Okay, so whoever is going to be with you pretty much from the beginning to the end. Then the B team is going to be the midwife or midwives that are going to look after you whilst you're in the hospital. And then your C team is going to be your doctor, whether if that's a private doctor, you will obviously have paid him to deliver your baby. So he or she is going to be there at the end, but they're not going to do any hand holding. If you're in a public hospital, then, most likely your baby is going to be delivered by a midwife under supervision of a doctor. If you're watching this from the UK and if you're in the NHS, then your baby is going to be delivered by a midwife, but there's going to be doctors around in case there is a complication. So we've got A team, B team, C team. And let's just talk a little bit about what you can control. Okay, so obviously you can choose who you want to be with you throughout your labor. And I'm gonna just spend a couple of minutes on that. So, because it's actually choosing your labor support wisely can have a massive, massive impact on you having a positive labor and birth experience. Okay. Most birth experiences that end up being fairly traumatic, when you analyze it, quite often doesn't have to do so much with the interventions that were done, but rather with the fact that the woman in labor didn't feel supported by the medical team or listened to or heard. So you want to try to make sure that you have got someone with you throughout your entire labor who makes you feel supported and who is going to have your back and is going to help you through it. Now, most of you may be thinking, okay, that's going to be my partner or that is going to be such and such, but it's definitely worth thinking a little bit about. You want someone who gives you confidence. You want someone by your side who makes you feel pretty relaxed and happy, and you want someone by your side who looks after you and not the other way around. You don't want to end up looking after your labor support. And I'm saying this because nowadays it's very much expected. Men are just very much expected to be, male partners are very much expected to be part of the labor support. And I think it's got a lot of advantages, but I also think that it can be slightly disadvantaged. You know what I mean? If the partner is not a natural caregiver at all, if he feels very uncomfortable in foreign situations, if he feels uncomfortable in a medical environment, and if he just feels not comfortable with being that primary labor support. In those cases, what you may want to consider is hiring professional support in addition to your partner, okay? So your partner is there, you're going to be there, and maybe you may want to consider having either a doula or a private midwife who guides you through it from the beginning to the end. And the huge advantage of that is that it will help you to stay at home for as long as possible, which is super, super important for anyone who wants to give birth as naturally as possible. It is also really good, you know, to have someone by your side who you can trust, and who you have seen a few times during the pregnancy. So there's nothing wrong with hiring professional support in addition to having your partner there. And some couples even decide to have the professional support in lieu of the partner because he just simply doesn't feel comfortable. So honestly, guys, it's definitely a conversation worth having. Now, what is the difference between a midwife and a doula? I'm just going to give you a quick background. Doulas are birth professionals that have been trained to provide emotional support during labor and in the early days with baby. And midwives are medically trained professionals, maternity professionals, who in a lot of countries are trained to follow up normal pregnancies, deliver babies if there are no complications, and follow up postnatal periods. And in the UK, for example, we deliver babies unless there is a complication. So that's just to go on to the next point. If you want to try to give birth as naturally as possible, i.e. with no medical interventions, no medical forms of pain relief, other than maybe a little bit of gas and air, then hiring a midwife may be a good option for you, because she can come to your house, stay with you throughout the labor. She can check your dilation, she can check the baby's heart rate, check your well-being, and then you all go to the hospital together. If you have a doula, obviously you will get that amazing emotional support, which is fantastic if you're not really that bothered about giving birth without pain relief, because then in those cases it doesn't really matter if you go to the hospital a little bit early, but then having your doula by your side will give you that extra emotional support that you will need, that you may need to get you through it. So I hope that makes sense. So choose your labor support, have an open conversation with your partner, and know that there are many options out there. Okay, now I'm just going to go to the comment section. Oh, hi Victoria. Yes, Victoria, second baby, first was an emergency section due to breach, and your waters broke prior to being admitted to the hospital. Oh, Victoria, and you are at Queen Mary. Fantastic. So we actually have Victoria who is at Queen Mary. So that is quite special. You had a bloody show this morning and were admitted. Contractions, pains were only in the lower abdomen and not really progressing. Been like this since Monday. Am I in for a long ride? Anything I can do other than walking? Okay, Victoria, so it would be good to have a little bit more information on your due date, because I can't remember from the top of my head. Having a bloody show, so just actually, yeah, so you were admitted to hospital. Was that because you had a bloody show? Because having a show that's bloody is actually quite normal. Victoria, I'm happy to just pop on a quick call with you after this session finishes. Due date is the 19th of August. Okay, so your baby is practically cooked. Ah, okay, yeah, so you had a show and you're in the hospital because you had an emergency section the first time. You can definitely walk around. Victoria, because this is such a specific question for your situation at the moment, I'm going to hop on a call with you after the session finishes. Okay, so just type in your phone number in the comments box, and I'm going to give you a quick 5-minute call after we finish. I hope that's okay, because otherwise it's just going to take away from the other points that I need to cover in relation to the birth plan. Okay, Sulan. So hospitals would allow non-family members to be present. Some hospitals do and other hospitals don't. So in Hong Kong, for example, most private hospitals allow non-family members to come in. And most, not all, but some public hospitals allow the same. However, in the case of public hospitals in Hong Kong, you're most likely to be allowed to take just one person with you at a time in the labor room. Okay, so now how my clients manage that, if I worked with them for labor, is that we either take turns, or they decide that they would like to have a midwife with them, and then the partner stays outside, and we just communicate that way. So there's many different ways around it. If a hospital policy says only one person allowed in the labor and delivery room, you can still take your midwife or your doula with you, but she's just gonna have to take turns with your partner. Okay. Okay, so very exciting, Victoria. You're going to be having a baby soon. Okay, now I'm going to just move on to how to prepare and strategize for birth. So if you've just joined, now at the beginning of the session, I said that in my practice, I look at birth preparation as being this big umbrella under which the birth plan takes up space, and then the other space is left for the actual preparation, and that is preparation for mind and body. And the preparation can start very early on in the pregnancy. It can start already before you're pregnant, but it is quite important, and I'm just going to today give you my intro on nutrition, on exercise, and on cultivating a healthy mind-body connection. Nutrition, it's not rocket science. The healthier your nutrition is, the healthier your body is going to, the better your body is going to function, and the better you're going to set yourself up for pregnancy, birth, and post-birth, actually. We can't forget about post-birth. We must do a separate talk on that. Now, when it comes to exercise, exercise, again, it's a subject that very often pops into the media. Can we exercise when we're pregnant? How much can we exercise when we're pregnant? What are the do's and the don'ts? And it is established by a numerous amount of studies that exercise and pregnancy are a winning combination. Okay, even the British and the American colleges of obstetrics and gynecology recommend that pregnant women ideally should do some form of exercise most days of the week. So that could be going for a walk, it could be going to a prenatal yoga class, it could be going for a swim, it could be if you're into CrossFit and your body is used to doing that, pre-pregnancy, you can carry that on during the pregnancy, provided that everything is working without any complications. The same with running. And I feel very passionate about this because going through labor and birth is like going through an endurance event. And if your body has never pushed itself through that barrier, if your body has never hit the wall before and you don't know how to push yourself over that, then labor is going to be just that little bit more difficult for you to cope with. Your baby is still going to come out, there's no doubt about it, but it's just going to be that more difficult to cope with. Now, I am not recommending that if you're watching this video and you're 38 weeks pregnant, I'm not recommending that you hop on the treadmill tomorrow and you start running vigorously. If you've never ran before, that would be really silly to do. But if you're used to doing an exercise routine pre-pregnancy, then you can carry that on during the pregnancy until you feel that your body needs to rest. Okay, and this is where cultivating the mind-body connection comes in, because we constantly need to connect the two. Okay, we need to connect our brain to what goes on with the body and vice versa. And I only have a few minutes left, but this topic is actually coming up in the next live Facebook event, which is happening on the 6th of April, I think, Wednesday the 6th of September. I'm going back in time. But I will confirm that in the comment section. Natalie or Shay, can you just confirm when the next event is on? Because that one is going to be focusing on well-being pre and post baby. So thinking about nutrition, thinking about exercise in relation to pregnancy, birth and post-birth. So again, as a little bit of a summary, the Urban Hatch guiding principles for birthing a baby is that you do need to strategize, you do need to prepare yourself. And that preparation includes thinking about the birth plan. So get yourself onto some really good quality antenatal classes. And if your baby is due in the new year or in the later stages of this year, I'm actually launching online antenatal classes in November, so you can go on to those. I'm really, really excited about them. And then you can do your birth plan, knowing that the only guarantee that you get from the birth plan is giving birth. Yeah? And then all the other points you can approach with an open mind, okay? Then, yes, thank you. Wednesday, September the 6th. So moving on to the next event, Little Steps Bump Club just confirmed that it will be happening on Wednesday, September the 6th. We're going to schedule it at the same time, so first Wednesday of the month in September at 12:30. I'm going to give you lots and lots of insights and tips on using nutrition and exercise as part of that well-being during pregnancy and post-birth. Now, let me know whether you found that this talk was helpful. If you want to learn about any other things, please comment, send me an email. And as a little reminder as well, if you're watching this through the Little Steps Bump Club Facebook page, it would be really, really awesome if you could hop onto the Urban Hatch Facebook page, like it, sign up for my newsletters, because I have got lots and lots of interesting free content and events coming up. The other way around as well, if you're watching this through my feed and you're not on the Hong Kong Bump Club Facebook page yet, worth hopping onto that one and liking it and signing up to the newsletter, because we're joining forces here, and a team is always better when it's when it's got a couple of really strong and passionate members. And I think both organizations are on a mission to to create a nice community for pregnant women, for their partners. And yeah, so I'm so happy to be in partnership with Bump Club. Now, fantastic. So I think we need to finish off. I have got a home visit to go to. I'm going to visit a new baby. But Victoria, I'm first going to call you because you were at Queen Mary Hospital and you're in the early stages of labor. So let's all do a big shout out to Victoria. Wish her luck, and I will see you guys here very soon. If you have any questions that come up after the feed finishes, pop them into the comment box and I can always answer them later on. Bye.